fact that France decided to invoke the use of Article 42.7 was something we discussed just in the hours after the attack in Paris last year. And it was an important political step, because for the first time a member state uses an article of the treaty that has some obligations for the other member states of assistance and aid. Not only a military one, but also a logistical support or other kinds of support that bilaterally member states give to France, in this case, to respond to an armed attack. And in this, there is a role that the European Union is playing through our military structures to accompany the process and make sure that things are done in a proper way. We do have 17 EU missions and operations around the world already, so we do have a capacity out there already, but there are articles of the treaties that we can use even more, and this is an example for that. What we are doing now is, as I said, bilaterally, some member states, at the request of France, through a European mechanism, some support on their attacks on Daesh in Iraq and Syria. I do not see a future EU military intervention in Syria or in Iraq. I said this several times. The European Union is having a role, a crucial one, on Syria and the fight against Daesh on two tracks. One is the humanitarian assistance we give inside Syria and around Syria, and second is the support and the facilitation we are providing for the political talks to try to solve the crisis in Syria. We give a framework for the military involvement of our member states in the coalition against Daesh or in the support to France in what it's doing. But I do not envisage a military intervention from the EU as such against Daesh on the ground or by air. What we've done immediately after having reached an agreement with Iran on their nuclear program after the summer, we have pushed for forming an international support group for Syria with all the relevant actors in the region and the international scene. So, as you said, Russia, United States, the European Union, the UN, but also the regional players that normally we do not sit at the same table. Iran, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Egypt, Jordan, Lebanon, others. This unity of the international community produced already a UN Security Council resolution that was passed unanimously on Syria, something quite big in just a few weeks ago. And that sets the roadmap for the future. The talks among the Syrians that are supposed to start within a few days in Geneva are going to be the starting point of, on one side, a political transition. So yes, a transition means that you start in one place and you end up in another one in Damascus. In parallel, a ceasefire among all those that are fighting the internal civil war in Syria that could allow us to unite forces to effectively fight against Daesh and defeat Daesh. And in parallel to that, a reform of the constitution of Syria and the preparation for elections, where not only the Syrians that are still in Syria, but also those that are outside Syria today could vote and determine the democratic future of the country. Rather than simply stating, as we have done for 4 or 5 years now, that Bashar al-Assad has to leave and he's still there, we start a process that allows the transition to begin. The only way of defeating Daesh, not only fighting but defeating Daesh, is to stop the civil war and unite forces against the major threats. Europe has always been the strongest actor in an economic or commercial scene in Iran before the sanctions were introduced, and you see this very clearly already. It's mainly for the European businesses to go back to invest. I see a lot of possible fields of cooperation between the European Union and Iran in the field of research and science and technology or culture. We have plenty of fields where cooperation is possible, none of them excluded. We have started already a political dialogue, bilateral political dialogue between the European Union and Iran, with all the issues on the table, including the difficult ones like the issues of human rights and fields where our positions are different. But the major success for Europe is the fact that we have managed to have diplomacy winning in this process. So it's a result for diplomacy, it's a result for Europe in terms of preventing nuclear proliferation, So it's a safety and security issue for us, but it's also something that could open the way for a more cooperative approach in the region. So the real success will come when this agreement will manage to open the way for different kind of relations, more cooperative relations between Iran and Saudi Arabia and other countries in the Gulf and in the region. This is the real investment. Sanctions on Russia have just been rolled over in December. The European Union was, is and stays united on this, on the fact that this is linked to the full implementation of the Minsk agreements. There is no change in policy there. And our work is not simply to keep the unity on the sanctions. Sanctions are not a policy in themselves. Sanctions are an instrument to put pressure and try to achieve the real objective, which is the full implementation of the Minsk agreement. Russians have some influence in the separatists that can do a lot to implement their part of the Minsk agreement. We are obviously working also with the Ukrainians to make sure that their part of the Minsk agreement is fully implemented. And this is our real work as Europeans, to try and have a full implementation of all aspects of the Minsk agreement, to have it fast, to bring back peace in Ukraine, to make the country work. We work in a constructive way with Russia. Think of the Iranian deal I just mentioned, we did it together. Think of the situation in the Middle East, we worked together. Think of the situation in Libya. All the work we do in the UN Security Council, we do it together. On the Ukrainian issue, on the annexation of Crimea, our policy stays the same, but our wish is that our relations with Russia could improve and that the Minsk agreement could be fully implemented.